Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the EEARSS Podcast, produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. I am Frank. That is Bill. That is Cindy. We are happy to have you here. And what a beautiful day it is. There's no wind out there. The river's super calm. It's amazing outside.
It's stifling.
Stifling?
It is stifling. And you are correct. There is no wind.
Stifling.
I've had
you're
students,
saying it's hot?
Yes.
I've had students out working on video projects, and they come back in and they all say, it is so hot outside.
It is nothing
And
yet.
I say it's 80 degrees in a month. It's going to be boiling.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't care. It's hot.
Wait till July and August, and then it'll be hot. Right now, it's remarkably nice outside.
Right. You think so, yeah. That it's
Stiflingly wonderful.
stifling. Wonderful. Okay,
What's the terminology you used a minute ago?
Stifling?
Stifling.
Not
They're
stifling.
so close to the same word.
There you
Yeah.
go.
They're both very interesting superlatives.
Definitely, Frank, yeah.
Very interesting superlatives.
Yes.
All right, you guys ready to jump on this today?
I think so.
I'm very excited. So today on the podcast, we are blessed to be joined by Dr. Kent Vliet. Thank you so much, Kent, for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for the invite. This is good.
Yes, sir. So you are I don't use this word lightly. I think you are kind of a legend in the crocodilian biology world, and I would love it if you tell us a little bit about you, how you got started in being interested in the world of crocodilians, kind of what led you there growing up, and a little bit about your educational background.
Okay, so by legend, I think you mean old.
No, they do not. They don't have to go hand in hand, Kent. They do not.
I grew up in a university town in Norman, Oklahoma. And when I was young, I was like a lot of guys, and I was interested in catching snakes and lizards and taking them home and keeping them in the house and all that. And I had learned a pretty good amount of natural history of reptiles and amphibians, even while I was still in junior high. I ended up in a car ride to Oklahoma City with a former president of the University of Oklahoma. And as we talked on the way up there and back, he realized that I had a passion and a fair amount of knowledge. And so while I was still in junior high school, he arranged for me to go over to the zoology department at the University of Oklahoma and start working in a research lab. And I worked originally in Dr. Victor Hutchison's lab, and he did a lot of work that we refer to as ecophysiology. It's kind of the physiological mechanisms associated with life histories. And one of the things he was best known for was the way pythons, female pythons, when they have a clutch of eggs, they wrap their body around it, and then they twitch their body muscles, which generates heat and helps incubate the eggs. And that was some of his early work. And so I started working in his lab, kept a few of the pythons that he still had from that original research, and worked with one of his grad students. And then less than a year after that, I moved out of that lab and moved out to the behavior lab that was run by Dr. Charles Carpenter. And he's best known for iguanid social displays, like the push-up displays, the head bob displays, the displays with the dewlaps and all that. He had described almost all of those for every iguanid at the time, and was well known for that. But he had this great big behavior lab, huge, actually, thousands of square feet, and he kept a bunch of animals there for incidental observations of behavior or for students to use as projects, which you really can't do that sort of thing anymore because of our animal care regulations. You really can't have animals in the lab unless they are serving a specific purpose. And so, anyway, I stayed at the University of Oklahoma and got my bachelor's of science in zoology degree there. And then I was able to use Dr. Carpenter's knowledge of or familiarity with other herpetologists at other universities and applied for several universities to go into graduate studies. And ended up at the University of Florida working with Walter Offenberg, who is best known for his work on behavior and ecology of Komodo dragons. He spent a year on Komodo catching and working with and studying Komodo dragons. But when I got to the University of Florida, I had been working with geckos in Dr. Carpenter's lab. And that's what I had on my mind, and that's what I thought I was going to do for my research. But I didn't find a really good project with geckos there. Dr. Offenberg had just come back from the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, where he'd spent a couple of weeks at the invitation of Ross Allen, who's another famous herpetologist, and who was at the time the head of shows at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm. And Ross had invited Dr. Offenberg over there to see courtship in the spring at like this time of year we're at right now. And so Dr. Offenberg had gone over there and watched behavior for a couple of weeks. And finally, he gave me his field notebook from that work. And he said, why don't you analyze this and then see if there's something in there that you want to do, which is what I did, and decided to go to St. Augustine and talk to them about me doing that work. So at the time, I had done a little bit of work with alligators. The biological station on Lake Texoma in southern Oklahoma had a couple of kind of stunted little alligators that they'd kept for decades in these concrete pens. And when I was down there for courses, I took care of those animals. And I had helped the zoo in Oklahoma City catch and move animals some. But I really didn't have much experience. So the first thing I had to do is go to the alligator farm and speak with the owner and tell him what it was I wanted to do and get his permission, which he gave me. And then the next problem was I needed to learn how to catch these big adult animals they had, because I needed to know each individual in the behavior study so that I could analyze behaviors that we saw on an individual basis, like is that a big male or a small female, or has this male interacted with this female in the past, that sort of thing. So I had these big yellow cattle ear tags with numbers on them. I'm sure everybody has seen those hanging off the ears of cows in fields. I was going to use those and clip them into the scales in the lower half of the tail, so that at some point during courtship, that tail would pop up and it would give me a chance to see the number of the animal that one of the animals I was observing. I had decided to study courtship behavior and social displays in alligators. And it would have been much easier to have put a tag or some sort of a mark up on the head of the animals. But that's where basically all the courtship action is on the head or the neck of the other animal. They come up to one another very slowly so as not to imply aggression. They stay low in the water and move ultra slowly and toward an animal. If the other animal is interested, they may stay put. If they're disinterested, they'll probably turn away and swim off. And so after some time, the animal that approached will very slowly and lightly move up and bump into the side of the head, like along where the teeth are, and then just wait to see what happens. And if the other animal's receptive, they will swing their head around so their heads are parallel but opposite to one another. And then from that position, one animal can turn and bump or push or rub along the tooth row or slide up on top of the snout or over the eye and cranial table and press down. And then that animal will stop and they'll return to this parallel but opposite orientation that I call a face-off. And then maybe the other animal will do some of these same tactile things. So it's very slow. You got to have patience. Very slow, not aggressive in any way. There's generally no biting at all, as you see in many other reptiles in courtship. Sorry. And so anyway, since all of those tactile or touching movements are to the head of the other animal, I didn't want to have anything obstructing it, like a numbered tag. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, so I had 165 adult animals in the first year of the study.
That's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, and then some of the tags fall off, so or they're attractive because they're brightly colored, and when they're feeding, we're throwing gobs of food into the lake, and they're just picking up what they see. Sometimes they'll end up grabbing one of the tags and jerking it out of the tail, and then I have to try to catch that animal and get a new tag in it so I can keep observing his behavior, his or her.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. So when you finally finished up with that project, what was next? What did your attention go to after your graduate studies?
So I ended up taking a job at the university where I was working. They had a teaching postdoc, they call it. It's a postdoctoral job that involved, in this case, involved me coordinating their teaching laboratories. The labs you take when you're taking one of the zoology courses. And I ended up doing that my whole career because I never ended up leaving Gainesville. So eventually that became a real job with benefits and all. But in the interim, I had met someone who became my wife ultimately. And she was preparing to go to vet school. We have a very good vet school in Gainesville, and she got accepted into that vet school, and so I couldn't really go anywhere for several years because she was in vet school, and by then, when she got out of vet school, she did a little internship in New York City for 13 months, and by the time she came back to Gainesville, where I was, we could have gone wherever we want at that point, but we couldn't agree on where we wanted to go, so we just stayed put. And so I've stayed in Gainesville, in the Gainesville area ever since. And I continued to work on alligators, on numerous aspects of alligator biology. My job was not a research position, so a lot of the work I did was done on the weekends or at nights, and then I did a lot of work, of collaborative work with others who were interested in studying alligators but didn't have access to the animals or the know-how of how to catch them and do whatever they wanted to do with them, take blood or whatever their studies involved. And so I ended up doing that for them.
That's pretty awesome. So first and foremost, you and the missus made quite the power couple, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Now that I'm retired, she doesn't want to, so she's still working.
Really? Okay. What? Just out of curiosity, what type of veterinary medicine does she go into?
Even though she's a horse person, she went into small animals, so she does mostly dogs and cats.
Did you guys have a chance to collaborate in anything throughout your career? I'm sure you did.
Well, I first met her when I was just a postdoc, had just become a postdoc, and I had a small grant from the Wildlife Conservation Society up in New York City to look at hormones of alligators, sex hormones and stress hormones of alligators in captive circumstances. And so the goal of the project was to take blood and using my same study animals that I had used previously, to take blood once a month through most of the year. But when we got to the reproductive season, like April and May and a couple of weeks before and after, we had to take blood every 2 weeks. And there were some provisos. We wanted blood from 10 males and 10 females, and we had to take the blood within 10 minutes of the initiation of capture of that animal. So even if you had a big 11-foot animal, if you roped it and dragged it to shore and tied it to a tree and jumped on it and went to take blood, if it had been more than 10 minutes, we couldn't use the blood. And we were interested in the effects of density and the differences between males and females. But it took quite a bit of effort to get the blood every 2 weeks. And so I needed teams of people that would go out with me. And my wife, Kathy, had started work on a master's program in animal sciences. And her major professor was was a fellow working with reproductive hormones of ponies. And so, we needed help on the project catch these animals. So we invited him and some of his grad students over to help us catch alligators and take blood and all that.
Ponies are just a little different than
it's a little bit of a different jam for sure.
Yeah. And he showed up with his lassos, and I just used old hemp ropes, to catch.
Yeah.
And he did know how to lasso. I've seen him lasso lots of ponies, but it was a different world when you're throwing the loop down to the ground and down into the water, and trying to get the end of the lasso to tuck underneath the lower jaw so you can let the rope hang back on the neck and tighten it around behind the jowls. And he never did really get the hang of it with the lassos, but he brought Kathy and some other grad students to help, and so that's how we met.
So you had her at Alligator, is that what you're telling me?
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty awesome. So, okay, if we're thinking back for you for a second, we have a lot of students here that listen to this program. I would like to ask a couple of questions in relation to that.
Yes.
If you were to go back in time, is there anything you would do differently about maybe the way you went along your career path, as far as would you have jumped into a different species? Would you have went a different direction at undergrad or graduate school? And do you have any advice you would give to people that are either jumping into college now, looking to get into biology or crocodilian biology, and what might that be?
Okay, great question. So, and I'm asked this sort of thing a lot. And I've done a fair amount of counseling of undergrads about their graduate aspirations as well. But the answer is I very well may have done something different. I've enjoyed my career working with crocodilians. And because I worked with museum specimens and zoo specimens and wild animals, I've worked with every species of crocodilian at some point or another. And so that's all been great. My daytime job was basically an administrative position, which is not always great. In a university situation, you have administrators constantly, pouring new policies down upon you, and you have to institute those policies and do that work, and that's often not that much fun. So when I was an undergrad, I think maybe even when I went to grad school, my parents were still convinced I was going to be a medical doctor. And I'm not sure I wouldn't have done that better than what I did with the alligators. But I didn't have any interest in being a doctor at that time. As I got into my research career, I definitely got more interested in medical aspects of caring for crocodilians, and whether I became a medical doctor or a veterinarian, I think I could have easily done those as a career as well, and maybe would have been better suited for that. And there are a few herpetologists that are medical doctors and have filled their career with caring for human patients, but on their spare time, they've used their knowledge and abilities to study reptiles, which was a hobby for them rather than their avocation. And I think that's not a bad way to approach it. For one thing, you get paid a lot better as a doctor, and so your life may be easier in that regard than just being a lowly zoology faculty member who never gets paid all that well.
Interesting. That's a good take. That's a good take.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like my choice of animals that I ended up with, but I think I could have been just as happy with working with geckos, which I started with. But I'm not at all unhappy with the work I've ended up doing. I'm retired now. I'm getting old, and my hands shake, and I can't do a lot of the things I used to, but luckily I've trained a lot of people to do that work. And so I can go and ask them to do what I would have done, and they do it well. And we can keep that research going.
Now, do you have any advice that you would share with young students who are looking to take maybe a similar path to what you took?
It's a hard path. If you're looking at like a college catalog, I've talked to so many high school juniors who are trying to figure out what they're going to do in the future, or their school is forcing them into some sort of a tracking program. And, they're looking at they're looking for a degree in herpetology because they had a similar interest to mine. And if you look for herpetology in a university catalog, you might find one or two courses that have that word in the title, but you don't find a degree in herpetology. And so that's the first misunderstanding you have to get into their head, that there are departments in which you may do research or teach on aspects of reptiles or amphibians, zoology or biology usually, wildlife biology, or wildlife conservation and ecology is another. But if you just go to the university and say, I want to study lizards or something like that, they're not going to know what to do with you. The beauty of a biology degree, undergraduate degree, is that it opens you up to a whole wide range of possible careers that you can do with that. So you could become a university professor and teach and do research in a big school or a small school. You could get a job at a zoo and work with reptiles there. There are still a lot of zoos that even preferentially hire people with PhDs to be curators of the reptile collection, even if that person doesn't really know zoo biology that well. You can work for wildlife, like state wildlife agencies. Many wildlife agencies are not just banding ducks and growing up bass to dump into lakes anymore. There's a lot of advanced programs that are interested in conservation and habitat preservation or restoration, and that people can get jobs in. They have non-game species specialists. So instead of working with deer or bass or some game animal. They're working with endangered dune mice, or they're working with small little salamanders that live in specific habitats in piney woods, or they're catching frogs in seep swamps that turn out to be new species of frogs. So they're still doing biology, and they're still well prepared for doing biology, but they're working for a state or federal wildlife agency, like the Game Commission here in Florida, or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or they may work for nonprofit conservation groups. Like the Wildlife Conservation Society I mentioned, which is an arm of the New York Zoological Society, and they have biologists all over the world that are working with wildlife species, typically endangered, and studying their biology and trying to learn what is needed to keep these animals from disappearing. So it's a good major in that sense. You're not, even though you may be picking it because you're forced down a tracking program at school, the major itself opens up all sorts of avenues to you rather than restricting you to one narrow discipline, which at the time in high school you may not be prepared to choose.
Makes a lot of sense. Kent, I can't tell you how much I've been looking for this conversation with you and how much we appreciate you talking to us. This has been a absolutely excellent conversation with I'm sticking to the term legend of the crocodilian world. And I really thank you so much for taking the time and for chatting with us.
Okay, I've enjoyed it, and keep up the good work.
I appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Me too, Frank.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, it's a lot of people in the world that I'm in, in the wildlife conservation world, they're actually out doing field research. He is one of the people that you hear his name get dropped all the time.
That's awesome.
And when you hear that guy's name get dropped, you know that that's somebody that actually knows somebody. That's okay, you're dropping Kent's name. Okay, he's a friend of yours. Okay, he's a friend of yours. Okay, copy that.
He's been at it for a while.
Oh, he's been doing it for a long time not only doing it, but doing it at the highest level. I mean, when you hear people like that, that's saying something. He spent a lifetime doing it, not a year or two. He's been getting after it for a long time. All right, you guys ready to end this?
Sure.
All right, thank you all for tuning in to the EEARSS podcast produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. If you'd like to learn more about EEARSS, you can go over to EEARSS.com.org or alligatorrobb.com. We have an event coming up very quickly, less than a month away now. EcoFest is going to be in Cocoa Village at Cocoa Village Amphitheater and Riverfront Park on May 23rd. It'll be from 4 to 10 p.m. We have 4 musical artists, headlined by Molly Levette and Joe Lasher. It's going to be an awesome evening of nonprofits, businesses. I think we have 10 food trucks lined up right now of all different backgrounds. There's even ice cream. All kinds of cool stuff happening. Come out, enjoy your evening. It's all completely free. Soak it up, have some fun, enjoy it. Learn more about our organization and all these other amazing organizations and individuals that are doing great things for your environment. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you all next week. Bye-bye.